meeting of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee of HRM. And I'm now calling the meeting to order, and I wish to make a roll call so that members can introduce themselves and so that the clerk can check if their cameras and audio are working. So I'm just going to go through the roll call. Firstly, Councillor Becky Kent. You are here?
I am here, yes.
Very good. Ashley Bowers.
Present.
Hello, Ashley. Miles McCormick.
How you doing?
Hi, Miles. Paul Berry. Not yet. Andrew Taylor, you mentioned, is he joining late?
Yes, Andrew indicated earlier that he wasn't sure if he would be able to attend at all. He is going to try, but he did have another commitment.
I see. Okay, thank you. Milena Casanavicius.
I'm here. Thank you.
Hello, Milena. I believe Elizabeth Pugh is going to join a little late. Is that correct?
Yes, she's running about 5-10 minutes behind.
Yeah. Peter Zimmer. Not here. Alison Carlisle.
Present.
Hello, Alison.
I'm here.
Hi. Mohammed Ehsan. Mohammed's not here. Douglas Wetmore, our Vice Chairperson.
Present. Thank you, Hugh.
Hi, Douglas. And I'm Hugh Millward, and I will be chairing the meeting. Staff members, I believe, obviously, Krista is here as our committee clerk. Is David McIsaac on the meeting?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello, David. And Alicia Wall, is she here?
Good evening, everybody.
Hello, Alicia. Very good. So we'll begin with the land acknowledgement. I'll just read this to you. We would like to acknowledge that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. So with that, we'll proceed with the agenda. The first thing is the election of a chair and vice chair for the next year's meetings. And at this point, I'll turn the meeting over to Krista Vining, the committee clerk, and she will call for nominations for the position of chair. Krista.
Thank you, Hugh. I'm just getting Elizabeth into the meeting.
Oh.
And here she comes. So with that, we're going to open and call for the position of chair. So if there are any nominations for the position of chair, please let me know.
I don't know. Did any? Does this normally go? For instance, is there a term each year now for instance, Hugh and Douglas? Is it normal that we would shift these out? Or I like the idea of continuity in the chair. So I haven't had a chance to even ask Hugh and Douglas if either one of them are interested in continuing, because I didn't.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, I can respond that I'm willing to be nominated, yes.
Okay, that's good. So Krista, is there anything from us nominating those that are in the chair and vice chair role now?
Yeah, no, you completely, so it can be done from the floor where we just need a nominator and a seconder. And then we'll call 3 times if there's any other nominations. And then if there are multiple nominations, then we will deal with it by way of secret ballot, and I can walk the members through what needs to be done.
Sure. So I will nominate Hugh for chair. And Douglas, are you interested in renewing?
I would be interested as well, but I think we're just doing the chair for now.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's
Krista?
correct. Yes.
Since I have the floor, I
Yeah.
thought I'd just ask, but okay, so I'll nominate you, and if
Yes.
anyone would like to second that, that'd be great.
Milena will wildly second.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? And third and final call. With that, if there are no further nominations, I will call for a motion to cease the nominations. So Councillor Kent, if you want to move to cease nominations, and then we'll just,
I'll
yeah.
move to cease nominations.
Is there a seconder to cease nominations?
Milena will seize, please.
All those in favor to close nominations, signify by signaling aye.
I
I
Against, signify in nay. All right, with that, Hugh has been acclaimed as chair. And Hugh, would you like me to go through vice chair, or would you like to do the call for vice chair?
You can proceed with the vice chair nomination.
All right, so I will now open the floor up for nominations for vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Douglas for vice.
Thank you, Councillor Kent.
Is there a seconder?
I can second, Allison.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Third and final call. With that, I'll call for a motion to cease nominations. I need a mover for ceasing.
I'll
So
move
moved.
that.
Okay,
And Hugh, I'll put you down as seconding.
okay.
All right, it has been moved and seconded to cease nominations for the position, or for calling nominations for vice chair. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. That is passed. And Douglas, you have been acclaimed as vice chair. So
Thank
I will
you.
now turn the meeting back over to Hugh.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and congratulations, Douglas. So now we'll move on to item 2 in our minutes, and that's approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, October 21st. Those minutes were, the draft minutes were circulated. Did anyone find any errors or omissions? No? Okay, that's good. So in that case, I'll call for a motion to approve the minutes.
I can approve that, Hugh.
Thank you, Douglas. And we need a seconder for that too.
I can do that, Hugh.
Thank you, Miles. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving as circulated, say aye.
Aye.
I
Aye.
And anyone opposed, say nay. Very good. So I'll declare that the motion is carried. That is, the minutes are approved as as presented. Thank you. Now we're on to item 3, and that's the approval of the order of business and any additions or deletions. So, Krista, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda as circulated?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have one addition, which is 9.1, or it will fall under 9.1 and for additions. It will be the 2022 Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting schedule. And I have circulated a proposed meeting schedule to members in advance so that there will be time to review, but I would request that this be formally added to the agenda.
Very good. Does that require a motion?
To approve your, yes, because you're adding it to the, you would,
Okay.
if there's any other items to add to the meeting, you would ask for a motion to approve the order of business as amended.
Okay, so are there any other additions to the agenda? Okay, then I'll call for a motion to approve the order of business with that addition mentioned by Krista. I'll need a mover for that and a seconder.
I'll move. Milena?
Thank you, Milena. And a
I can
seconder.
second.
Elizabeth can second.
Elizabeth Pugh?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, Elizabeth. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of the order of business as amended? Say aye.
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 Thank you. And anyone opposed, say nay. No one opposed. So that means that the motion carries and the agenda is approved with the addition. Business arising out of the minutes. Item 4, I believe there is none, unless anyone knows that there is. There's no business arising. Item 5 is a call for declaration of conflicts of interest related to the agenda. Again, I suspect there wouldn't be any, but if anyone feels there is a conflict of interest, please let us know right now. No? Okay, that's good. No conflicts of interest. We move on to item 6, which is consideration of deferred business. And as far as I know, again, there is no deferred business. Item 7 is correspondence, petitions, and delegations. So 7.1 is correspondence. Krista, has there been any correspondence received in your office?
There has been none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And petitions is item 7.2. Well, firstly, Krista, has there been any petitions submitted?
None as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And committee members, have you received any petitions that you've been asked to bring forward? No? Okay, that's good. We're moving through the agenda fairly swiftly. Item 8 is the main order of business today, I think, which is the staff report. And we'll be calling on David McIsaac to present a staff report on updates regarding the active transportation work. So David, over to you, please. David McIsaac?
Great. Yeah, no, I'm here, Hugh.
Okay.
I have this system where I hope it won't crash like last time. So I got to press a few buttons on 2 different devices here.
Okay.
So I guess I'll kind of give a high level overview and also kind of focus in on 1 or 2 activities or projects that are happening right now, and also answer a specific question that Hugh had submitted regarding the involvement in traffic calming projects. Am I coming through okay on the audio?
It's a little choppy, but it's okay, I think.
Okay, I'll bring it a little closer to me. So I guess the main, what's going on with the AT group right now, I think finishing up this year's capital projects is something that we are supporting. A lot of the projects are finished. Some they're still actually doing construction on, and a few others have been delayed until next year, or parts of it have been delayed until next year. But generally have built everything that we intended to build this year, with 1 or 2 exceptions. When we don't build a project that we expected to build this year, the project doesn't go away. The money and the project just carry over into the next year. So an example of that would be, we thought we would be in a position to build some new sidewalk and AT infrastructure in North Preston on King Street. But a big part of our project there was to do it in conjunction with the community and kind of have a deeper, different than in the past kind of type of community engagement there. And it was a real challenging year to do that in North Preston. One, because of COVID, Two, because of various things that were happening in the community where, talking about AT just wasn't the priority. So that project moved a little slower than we hoped. That's another one. Terminal Road protected bike lanes were on the list for this year, but it took us a while to kind of figure out an intersection design challenge, which we now have solved, but it's a bit late in the year. So again, that one will get punted till next year. The other thing that we're spending a lot of time on right now is finalizing the project list for next year. Council will receive, I think, a draft capital budget pretty soon, before the end of the calendar year. So that kind of gives you a sense of where we're going. And so that information will be out there. And if folks want a more detailed look at that list at a future meeting, just let me know and I can prepare for that. I can only give it to you after council gets it. So timing will be a factor there. Just in terms of what's going on with public engagement on various projects, we just finished public engagement for the Africville Active Transportation Connections project and are reasonably happy with what we got there. Again, COVID and the types of public gathering rules and regulations have been a challenge, but I think we've got some quality input there. Also just finished engagement on the Windsor Street Exchange project, where we're also trying to achieve some active transportation goals in addition to some goods movement and car movement goals. So I've seen a couple of submissions from members of this committee. So we'll be following up on that. I think our last batch of public engagement this calendar year will be some work in Dartmouth North to look at complete streets and bikeways there, and also finishing up the North Preston engagement. And then we've got, I won't give you the list, but coming up in the new year, there's at least 5 or 6 projects where we'll be looking for public feedback. Lucasville, East Preston, Woodside, Shearwater, the south end of the peninsula, Morris Street, you've heard of that project perhaps in the news. So all that stuff's going to be out for engagement in the new year. One thing that is up on the Shape Your City site for public feedback now, and it's just going to be up there for a while, is on our pilot active transportation wayfinding project. So we have installed signage on 3 or 4 multi-use pathways, Chain of Lakes, a little bit on the Dartmouth waterfront, Sackville Greenway, Mainland North, and we are going to be adding some pretty soon, might even be this week, on the Vernon Street, local street bikeway and connecting facilities there. And I think what we really want to hear from the public or from folks like you is, do you like it? Is it helpful? Is it worth the time and effort that it's going to take to kind of expand it across the municipality? And then there's also kind of a question there about where else should we be putting it? So that's kind of the status of that project. Bicycle Nova Scotia has been kind of a partner in helping us, developing a system that we're using. We supported that and we're kind of adapting it. And also we had a little event about a month ago to kind of, we also co-brand some of the facilities with our wayfinding. So Chain of Lakes is also part of the Blue Route. So we had a little acknowledgement of that as well. I'll put the website link to that survey there. I guess a really big thing for us in the last month was that since we last met is that the province decided to finally, Elizabeth, I know it's not your responsibility, but regulate bicycle traffic signals in the province. So that, we've had a few projects that have been kind of waiting until we had that legislation in place. So that, and if you look at I don't know if you've been around the Wise Road, McDonald Head area, we've kind of got a project there, protected bike lanes that is almost finished, but we need bike signals to actually finish it. So we now have the power to well, we don't have it yet, but after the province approves the regulations, we will be installing a lot more bike signals around there and in other projects as well. So it's a new tool for the toolbox, and it's a big help. I guess, Hugh, I'll let you kind of probe as well, but one specific question that came from, all right, maybe I'll stop there. I see Councillor Kent's hand is up and.
Councillor Kent, did you have a specific question at this time?
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you, David. If you had more to offer, I do have a question when you're done. I can ask it. I can ask it now,
Okay.
or we can wait. I don't want to interrupt your report.
Perhaps.
My spiel. I'm pretty close to the end here, so
Okay.
let me, and then we'll
Yeah.
go back. I guess Hugh was kind of curious about, as the municipality implements traffic calming projects, and especially, I think, the traffic calming project that's on Eisner Boulevard, what role the active transportation planning group has. So I think basically we're consulted is pretty much our role, and sometimes we serve as advisors on the projects. For a lot of the, we've kind of gone from almost nothing on traffic calming to a pretty substantial program in a couple of years. It's led by the traffic management group, who are kind of a sister group of ours within transportation and public works. They share with us their lists of candidate streets, for traffic calming to see if there's overlap with some of the projects that we're planning. And often, sometimes there is, especially the local street bikeway projects. And so, those are opportunities to collaborate and just, have consistent messaging about what we're doing and why we're doing it. The Eisner Boulevard project, it was a candidate street for traffic calming, and it's a street that's going to get a more substantial overhaul in the next couple of years. It's up for renewal, and I think the traffic management group wanted to try kind of a street narrowing approach there to see if that would slow down the vehicles. And they also saw an opportunity to add some active transportation infrastructure on the side of the street that didn't have it. So, we sat down with them a couple times to talk about the project and, to give our 2 cents. They're trying a few new things there. They're trying different types of pavement markings. They are, they've never done, HRM has never done this kind of a project before. So it's part of what we've been asked to do by council, which is to try new things, move as quickly as we can. I think there's a spirit of sort of trying things, learning from it, and then adjusting. And with these tactical projects, you can do that because it's, fairly low cost to implement. And then, there are opportunities to tweak them or extend them. I think that project is kind of the beginning, and they are looking for ways to potentially bring it a little bit further toward Portland Street or Norm Newman, and are not quite sure how to do that yet. Maybe I'll leave it at that and open for questions or clarifications on that report.
Okay, I think what we'll do is go through the speaking list that I have in front of me, but I suspect both Councillor Kent and myself will want to speak specifically to the last point that you've raised. But I'll go through the list. So, Milena, do you have questions or concerns?
Yes, I do have a question. Hi, David. Thanks for your report. All sounds great. I'm curious, and I've been trying to find out, and this is pertaining specifically for people who are blind and partially sighted, and sorry, the raised bike lanes, the ones that are flushed with the sidewalk. And I'm going to refer back to Sackville and South Park street where there is a flushed, I'm going to call it a flushed bike lane protected. So it's even with the sidewalk. And for those of us who are blind and partially sighted, there are 2 tactile markers, one indicating the end of a sidewalk, one indicating the end of the bike lane. You cross the intersection being South Park, you hit another tactile marker, and then you hit a second tactile marker. And from the people I have questioned, they have told me information such as, 1, this is supposedly a standard going across the country. 2, that they have consulted with CNIB office local here. I have checked into all of those, and both of those items are false. And what is happening, if people can understand, on Sackville and South Park, is that when you're using a white cane or a guide dog, I know of 3 individuals who have walked down the bike lane because that first tactile marker indicates the beginning of a sidewalk. And nobody can answer me why this is being done. I would hope that this pilot project is stopped because it is not working and is endangering those of us who are blind and partially sighted. So if you can reply to that, David, that would be great. If you cannot, please direct me to someone who can. Thank you. End of thought.
Well, it's probably something to have a more focused discussion on than we can have here. I know there are, when the bike lane and the sidewalk are at the same level, there is a certain type of tile that's kind of put between them that has been recommended or identified by an association that I'm not going to have the name for right now. There's also, so there are tiles there, they're directional tiles that are intended to sort of indicate for people who are visually impaired, you know, that something's different. There's also at the intersections, you know, that there is also those tactile warning plates that go down, you know, they go down on one side of the bike lane to kind of indicate that there's a crossing there. And then on the other side, they go down to indicate that there's, you know, a transition to the street and to the sidewalk. I guess, you know, we should probably have a follow-up conversation, Melena, and you know, your comment that it's false, I think is, I don't know for sure. I know that there have been various discussions with CNIB. There's been communications about which particular tile is the right tile to use. Yeah, maybe I'll leave it at that, and maybe we can follow up offline and kind of come back with a better and more fulsome overview of where things stand right now, and get some feedback. If you know, it's a strong consideration in the design process. Maybe the final result is not what is safe, but it's following a certain set of criteria, or you know, there have been guidelines and we've been doing our best to follow them. I guess the other thing is that these are all new facility types, and it's, you know, sometimes you look in one set of design guidelines and they say do this, and another set they say do this. So it's also kind of a learning as we go kind of thing.
Right. That conversation will be appreciated because what is there is not working. And if there's only on one side of a street with a raised bike lane, flushed bike lane, and not on the other, it is hugely confusing. And I have checked in with national and local office here. Nobody has spoken to CNIB. So, but we'll have that conversation. Thank you. End of thought.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say that I have been personally part of conversations with CNIB, and maybe the wrong people at CNIB or different people than you're talking about, but I think there has been efforts, but clearly we need to do more.
Okay, well, it looks like you'll follow up on that, both of you, and we'll move to Alison Carlisle if she has any questions or concerns.
I just have a quick one, and you might not have the answer to this, David. Just about if the plan is to like narrow the lanes on Eisner, is there a plan right now on whether there will be like traffic speed studies that will be published so we can look at that?
So they do after studies. I'm not quite sure off the top of my head how they disseminate that information, but if the committee has specific questions on that, I can reach out to traffic management and come back to you with some of those results. Probably it'd be something that, you know, it's not going to be next month. I think it's something that they do. They've done all this traffic calming everywhere. So I'm not exactly sure of their process and how much follow-up they do, but I will, I'll try to find out.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Alison. Elizabeth Pugh, you have questions or concerns? Elizabeth?
I think my only concern is how to unmute myself quickly. No, I don't have anything specific, but I would like to just comment on the conversation that was going on between David and Melina. And David is probably aware of this. I'm just not sure. This is a problem that has occurred in other places. Coming off a crosswalk and turning into a bike lane for people who are unsighted and not realizing that there's sort of two levels of infrastructure there. And I know that Ottawa has been doing some very recent work on this and has just recently published some work on protected intersections and how to solve some of these problems. So that might be just some information to follow up with, David, if you're not already in the loop with that.
Yeah. And from Ottawa, like they started by building at-grade bike lanes, and earlier this year they decided that the bike lanes should be kind of halfway down, almost between the level of the sidewalk and the level of the street. So that's sort of a direction that they decided, and obviously now that's something that we're learning from these other cities. So that's something that we're going to start considering as well.
Yeah, and I know both David and I are on various committees at the Transportation Association of Canada, and these protected intersections and how to deal with this kind of stuff is a very lively conversation. So, you're not alone in finding it frustrating, and I think there's people across the country that are trying to figure out how to do this. So hopefully we can be on the leading edge of a solution.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. So Ashley Boas, do you have questions or concerns?
Yeah, more a query. I don't know if it can be answered at this point in time. I guess my concern, I'm very excited about bike traffic signals being regulated. I guess my concern would be similar to how pedestrian signals are timed with regular traffic signals and how there's so many interactions and possible interactions at intersections. And I don't even know how to phrase this, but how do we ensure that that is avoided with like bike signals, that like the bike signals are not signaling at, whether it's just an advance for bikes, or basically I just don't want people turning into bikes like they do with pedestrians regularly. And is there a way?
Say that last part again, Ashley?
Like, I don't know if anyone else knows what I'm trying to say and how to word it better, but how do you avoid with bike traffic signals interactions with bikes and cars at intersections as there are with pedestrians? Or are they just advanced lights?
Okay. Yeah, at an intersection, there's always going to be interaction with the different users. That's what happens there. And I guess the lights and the signs and the various restrictions and stuff are intended to help manage that. Sometimes you can do the phasing. So let me just try to give an example. So there are sometimes, the bike traffic signals, on Wise, for example, coming off the bridge, I'm pretty sure that when the bike signals are on green, the signals for the cars, like specifically, I think you're thinking turning cars, they'll be restricted. But it's, it's about yielding behavior. It's about, I'm not sure it's been, it's about things like the advanced pedestrian signal, and maybe when we have bike signals, we have been talking about places where we would do advanced bike signals as well. So those are some of the measures that happen with those signals to, I guess, make pedestrians, make the vulnerable road users more visible. But it's a challenge. There's a lot going on at those intersections, and you've got 4,000-pound cars and trucks, and vulnerable people, and it's if everybody behaves the way they're supposed to behave, it's all good, but that's not always the case. I don't think that's a great answer, but I think we're trying.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to mark it as a thing of we haven't quite got there with pedestrians yet. So hopefully with new bike lights, we can kind of work towards, less interaction. And hopefully they will help a great deal. So cheers.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. And maybe this is something, it is a very specific topic, but it's maybe something that we should look into in more depth at a future meeting. And perhaps David will take that under advisement and see if we can get I don't know about a staff presentation, but something in more detail, perhaps at a future meeting. Okay. So now we're on the speaking list. We are down to Councillor Kent, and I imagine you have a question or concern.
Yes, I do actually have a number of them. David, when you have a chance, can you just update us on where the Sharewater Flyer Woodside Active Transportation Corridor project might be? The Eisner and Portland Trails connection, just want to know, as the project is being reviewed, your role in consultation and such, I think, will be more vital than ever to make sure that the considerations around the gap between the end of the trail on the east side of Eisner gets connected to the proper place further down by the library, and because I think there's some consideration of how to link that trial corridor for bikes and pedestrians to the trail as well. So we just want to make sure that you stay connected with Hugh and such, because that's going to be a really important dialogue. So we get that right. I would very much would like you also to take consideration of maybe a staff presentation and allow for further conversation, particularly with Milena and others around the tactile approach. It is being done in our city, but I don't know how well educated we all are on it. And it would be, this committee, I think, could be really helpful in giving some input and asking questions around some of the challenges and thoughts to making sure that when we do put this stuff out, we have a full understanding of some of the potential context within the community that they're going to experience it. So I think that's one of the gaps we've had at Eisner, that we've not had that kind of opportunity. And this is a good committee to start that conversation. I think, am I safe to say that maybe a presentation probably hasn't happened yet here? I think it would be really helpful. Just on the traffic calming approach to inserting that type of, utilizing that type of tactile approach, and how that connects to active transportation in general, and how situations like Milena has brought forward, and others, frankly, families with strollers and children that are, learning to walk independently, not having to hold hands of a parent in some of those corridors, knowing that, bicycles and things, but it's very different because you're right on a roadway. So that kind of feedback, I think, could be really helpful, and it could start here at this committee.
Okay, now, does that require an answer from David?
No, I don't think that one requires an answer. I would like to hear about the active transportation corridor, and just his thoughts on, I don't need to tie up a lot of time on the Eisner, but I do want him to understand, and maybe you can comment on what you see your role in the future as we look at this as a trial. Because this one in particular is probably the most fulsome in the municipality. This is a really good learning one, right?
Yep. So yeah, I think, one thing, I think I only really understood that gap issue around Eisner and either side of the Portland Hills Greenway when I met you and Hugh on site there that day. And I was kicking myself a little bit because I didn't really bring that into the conversation about the tactical project because I wasn't aware. And, sometimes, I mean, to be honest, we can't, there's a gazillion things going on and you kind of get pulled into these meetings, and it's sort of what you have in your head at that time that you contribute to the discussion. And then you get, pulled off into other stuff. So, one, I have a much better appreciation for the issues there now, just from that site visit. Wish I'd done it before. And absolutely, I think, we're dialed in now. And I think there may be opportunities to address some of those issues with an extension of the tactical one. But I think 100% there's opportunities, and I think some really good ones, to fix that and improve the whole area when we do the bigger project recapitalization in a couple of years. And we're always really involved in those kinds of projects. So I think it's going to get nothing but better.
If you haven't already, it would be worth going out and having another look now that the tactile is in there, so you can get a good sense of what's happening there. That would be appreciated. The Woodside Sharewater corridor, any news on that?
Yeah, well, we're kind of hovering right now. We just, amidst all the priorities, we just kind of put that one for public engagement in the new year. And the only other thing, and I might even touch base with you offline, is I'm just trying to get my head around those Imperial refinery lands and what is or is not possible or in scope for that. Because I think as the community group there is really interested in going kind of through the middle of that site. And to date, we've really talked about a facility alongside Pleasant Street there. And that's something that we really need to figure out soon in terms of ruling an option in or out and responding to the community's interests there. So that's on a little slower track. And the reason it's on a slower track is because it's not really in our budget we don't have a budget yet, but in our plan to construct until 2025, I think. So, just relative to other projects, that was one we could delay for a couple of months, but it's coming back.
Good.
And yeah, I mean, I will talk to the design group about coming to this committee and whatever other groups that we think we need to do, just to kind of come back to that conversation about these new facility types and what's being done, from an accessibility perspective, and what needs to change. I think we're very open to learning and adapting, because we get conflicting advice and conflicting information, and I'll talk to Ann Sherwood maybe about a little presentation to this committee, and then maybe we'll follow up with, take your folks' advice on what we should do next.
Great.
Okay, very good. Is that okay with you, Councillor Kent? Do you have any more questions or concerns?
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Douglas Wetmore, do you have questions or concerns?
Nothing else to add to that tonight, Hugh. Thank you.
Okay. I think that just leaves me, unless I've missed someone there, but I do have a couple. Oh, Miles.
I'm all right, Hugh. Thank you, though.
Sorry, you actually weren't on this list for some reason. Okay, Miles.
No, I'm okay at this point. Thanks, Hugh.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm sorry I missed you off because you weren't on my list here. So,
And
okay.
you've overlooked me as well, Hugh. It's Paul Berry.
Oh, yeah, Paul. Well, that's really odd. Okay.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. That was a clerical error on my part when I put together the speakers list. Just
Okay.
my
So,
apologies to the members.
that's okay. So,
Can
Paul, do you have any questions?
No, none whatsoever. Thanks.
No. Okay. And was there anyone else that I missed? No. Okay. So, yeah, David, I have a couple of questions or concerns, not specifically about Eisner, but they were raised in my mind from what happened with the Eisner tactical street calming measures. One of the issues that really surprised me, and I know it surprised a lot of residents, was that, well, firstly, I guess we were only vaguely aware that street calming had been identified for that street, but there was no consultation beyond that. And suddenly, they come in and not only are they changing and narrowing the lanes, but they're putting in a multi-use pathway. And the residents right on the street, that were affected by this weren't aware it was going to happen. So I know that the Active Transportation Group does consultation with the public, but this work seems to have been led by Transport and Public Works. And my understanding is you're not part of that group. Is that correct? You were.
So we're both part of Transportation and Public Works, but different
portion.
We have different directors.
Okay. So in fact, it was the traffic management group that did most of the work and consulted with you, or you had input to them. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And they would take that plan to 7 or 8 different business units groups within HRM just for feedback and comment, and we're one of them.
Okay, so there was lots of consultation internally within HRM, but no consultation at all with the residents who were going to be affected. And I know a lot of people were up in arms about that. And I think it's part of the learning going forward, I think, is that you really need to let people know that at least something's going to happen, even if, and hopefully that people have some input into what's going to happen. That was one thing. Another concern that I had was, specifically, there was a concern on Eisner in that they marked a multi-use path on the road and put in green bollards to signify, normally that would signify it's a bike lane. So it's painted as a two-way bike lane, but with pedestrians allowed on it. And that's on the road. And to me, that's just a recipe for accidents, because cyclists will assume that they have the right of way, that it's a cycle or bike way. And whereas pedestrians are supposedly also supposed to be on it. Now, is this the only place in the city where that's happened, or because on a greenway, we all know, at least we all should know, that pedestrians have the priority over bikes. But if you've got a painted bikeway on a road, bikes will assume they've got priority. Can you speak to that?
Is there a pedestrian symbol as well, or just a bike symbol?
There is a pedestrian symbol as well.
So I think that again, that hasn't been used before, and it's I guess interested in feedback. But the idea there was to put a bike and a pedestrian symbol to kind of indicate that both are allowed there. On other more permanent facilities, we typically have some etiquette signage, one of which includes a message about bicyclists yield to pedestrians.
Yeah, exactly. On greenways, you have messages like that, but this looks like a bikeway. You know, it's with the green bollards and it's on the road surface.
Yeah.
And so it's wrong for pedestrians to be encouraged to use that, I think.
Yeah, well, I guess that's feedback. I mean, they're gonna see how that works and
Well, all right. I'm giving my
I
opinion,
guess
but
the bike symbol and the pedestrian symbol are there, I guess, to communicate to the public that both user groups are permitted. You know, bicyclists are supposed to yield to pedestrians. I guess we'll get some feedback on whether that's happening here. And
well,
I'm
I
not
can
sure what
tell
to
you,
say about that.
there's been a lot of feedback already on a major Facebook site, a resident Facebook site that I administer. And Councillor Kemp will know she's had a lot of feedback about this. And that is one of the specific issues that people raised. They just see that as an accident waiting to happen.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Hugh, a little bit, or just sort of clarify.
Yeah.
I mean, we know we have trails that you'll see bicycles and pedestrians and runners on all at the same time. And there's an expectation that they will work together collaboratively to keep the trail safe. The bicyclists would yield to the walkers and such. So I guess in theory, if it were a formalized trail as such, that principle would be applied. I think, David, the difference here is that you literally are in the road. So if there was a collision, one or two or many of them or all of them might end up in a roadway where cars, you're not going to win against them. You might win against a tree or shrubs in the ditch of a trail, but you're never going to win against cars. So that's the difference in what's at play here at Eisner. And again, not to tie up everybody here, but this is a really important conversation because this is what I think one of the first times the municipality has created this combination. And that Hugh, when I spoke at the meeting last night, is there's a whole bunch of complex issues sort of all converging here together. And so the trial is going to be really important to consider what we've just talked about right now. This is very unique. You're in a roadway, and when you've got all of them there together, if a collision happens, it's going to be much more unsafe. And then we have potentially the snow and slick and ice and all of those things contributing in a roadway where people are traveling by foot or they would be by on a cyclist cycling anyway, but usually the pedestrians are on the sidewalk. So whereas this is different. So be helpful for you to support that conversation going further. When you're in conversation with our traffic folks, I will.
Oh, I'm part of the conversation now. Don't worry.
I will too, but yeah, this is important information.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I think we've had the problem, and David's aware of it now, and hopefully people's concerns, our concerns, will be taken seriously.
The only thing though, Phil, or sorry, I don't know why I said Phil, Hugh, is that all these traffic calming measures go in under the traffic calming administrative order.
Yeah.
And that administrative order doesn't require public consultation in advance. I'm not sure exactly what it says, but it certainly doesn't require it. So, that's a change in policy. I think, there would have to be, I guess it's a conversation to be had. Is my only comment on that. There's a lot of traffic calming happening, so there would have to be a bit of you'd have to look at what's necessary and what's useful but there'd have to be some direction from council, I think, to change that. And we do a lot of engagement in our group. Our projects are leading to permanent changes. So I think that's part of why we do it. I think it's kind of part of the change management process. But I don't disagree with you that some upfront communication on this project would probably have been beneficial.
I do believe, David, and this is be worth the committee knowing that I believe there is a report coming soon with some considerations of change there, and that might be opportunity to insert some of these things into it. So if anything does come out of Transportation Standing Committee, it's likely that it would come here as well. I don't know for sure, David, on that with policy, but that I think is coming sooner than later. Don't know what it looks like. The devil's in the detail, right? On changes.
Okay, well, I think we've aired the issues. I've just seen on the chat text that we are talking about Eisner in off Portland Street in Dartmouth, not Eisner Boulevard in Burnside. So they're spelled differently, and yeah, so maybe people were confused by that.
EI.
Sorry? Yes, yeah, this is EISENER by the Superstore in East Dartmouth. Okay, and I noticed, oh, there he is. Peter Zimmer had joined the meeting. Peter, did you have any questions or concerns? I don't know if you caught David's talk.
No, I did not catch his talk. My apologies for joining late. Personal circumstances just got in the way of my signing on.
Okay, fine. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for that useful discussion. I think it was useful. We'll move on then, unless there are any, if anyone has a final comment or concern, now's the time. So hearing none, we have item 8.2. Oh, sorry. No, item 9, the added item. Okay, the added item was the Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting schedule for 2022. And you received the proposed schedule. Are there any changes that anyone would like to see to that schedule? Okay, hearing none, Krista, I have a motion here that you've provided me wording for. Do we need a mover and seconder for that?
Yes, that's correct. Basically, it's the same as your minutes. You would just move to approve the proposed schedule as circulated. Or you could make changes and then approve it as amended.
So should I move this motion?
You as
then?
chair are not able to move motions. You can certainly second motions. So if you just ask for a mover, you can certainly second.
I can move that for you, Hugh.
Okay, thank you, Douglas. Should we read? Would you like to read the motion? Do you have the motion?
I think I've got it here open
Well,
up.
let me read it. Let me read it, and then you can move it. The motion is that the Active Transportation Advisory Committee approve the proposed 2022 meeting schedule as presented.
Yeah, and then I can move that.
So Douglas is moving that. And a second. Okay. Councillor Kent is seconding that. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed say nay. Hearing none, the motion is approved. Thank you. And the date of our next meeting will be then in January the 20th. So please make a note of that. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Oh, before we adjourn,
Yeah.
Chair, sorry, it's just
Sure.
Melina. I just have a quick question for Krista, if I may.
Sure.
While we're all here, is there, and maybe it's just my system, but with every meeting we're having, I seem to be getting 3-4 email invites. Is there a way to stop that somehow and just have one or
Yes.
two at the most?
So
I'm sorry, it just gets very confusing.
Agreed. So moving forward, certainly, so what I have done is your names were added to an Outlook calendar appointments. Of course, any little adjustments will send out an updated email. And I realize that can get very daunting for people's emails and schedules and whatnot. So I can certainly make it that, we'll just communicate moving forward with members by email as opposed to adding your names into the calendar invites, with the exception of our Councillor Kent, because that is something that, HRM staff as well as the councillors do use the Outlook calendars. If you specifically would like an Outlook calendar invite, please let me know, but we can work to send, a separate email to the body of the committee with all of the information. And then we'll try to avoid any sort of additional email details where possible, recognizing that there may be changes or adjustments needed as we go.
Thank you. And I see the text, Elizabeth Pugh would like an Outlook calendar.
I
So-
believe there's a way to update the appointments without resending them.
I believe so too. And that's something I can look into. The most recent ones did have actual updates, adjustments to provide additional information to the committee, but I'll make sure that when I'm sending these updates that where I can avoid, notifying all members, I will try to do that.
I just want to clarify, maybe make sure that we're talking about the right thing, because I know in my calendar I have two different invites, one to hold the meeting and then one with the link.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's what Melinda was talking about, like the multiple emails or the two different invites.
I think it could be a combination of both. So initially we schedule out to hold your calendars just so you can, as a placeholder. The practice for regional council is the same. We do a placeholder and then we send a separate meeting invite with all of the details of the committee agenda, as well as if it's virtual, the call-in information and the meeting link to join. Again, going forward, if it's something of, we need to adapt our process for this particular committee, we can certainly look at, options moving forward. But I think what Milena is experiencing is whenever there is an update, it seems to be just emailing her again and again and again. It could become, sort of like cumbersome. And I don't disagree. And this particular meeting was very unique in the sense that we had a previous schedule that was set for 4:30 a.m. mistakenly, not realizing. And of course, we are in afternoon, evening meeting. Nobody wants to get up at 4:30 a.m. So it just added to sort of the additional emails and communications with the group. But again, I will try moving forward. The other thing was there had been a previous, committee clerk. So we transitioned a bit, and hopefully moving forward, you won't experience some of those issues into the new year.
Okay, thank you very much, Krista.
May I just ask one more question as well?
Sure.
Thank you. I find with this particular format of our meetings, when you go through the speaker list with questions and things, that it doesn't foster conversation. And I think this is just a byproduct of Teams meetings. So I'm just wondering if it would be possible, and I don't know within the sort of formal rules of how we're supposed to be doing things. If, for example, David gives his presentation, Melina makes some comments, and then Allison wants to comment on Melina's comments, if we could perhaps introduce like a hand raising or something while that's going on, rather than moving on to the next person. Because it's great if you're after the person you want to comment on, but if you haven't had a chance, or you know what I mean, like if there's something that comes later on, but you've already had your chance to speak, there's no opportunity really to add to it or to ask further questions based on a further comment in the conversation. Sorry, that didn't come over very well.
No, Elizabeth.
Is that something that we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the speakers list more so came as a suggestion to ensure that everyone felt that they had the same equal opportunity to speak and just created sort of a bit of order. But there is nothing stopping the committee from certainly raising hands. The raised hands feature makes it a bit difficult because it doesn't necessarily show in the order that people have requested. It does to an extent, but what we do for regional council when we were meeting virtually is in the chat feature, members would say request to chat. They would type in request to chat, and that would queue up for the chair to say, okay, I can see who wants to chat. The only thing is we would limit the chat from getting, from really discussing items within there so that it can be, well, one is it can be FOI popped, but two, so that the chair can keep track of the speaking order requests. But certainly, you know, and I assume, or Hugh, I won't speak for you, but that, you know, this certainly is where you're an advisory committee and this is the, you know, the platform to have sort of those, you know, discussions back and forth with members.
Yeah, if I can respond, I can see the value of a speaking list when there are several items on the agenda, because the speaking lists are designed so that the order varies, so that everyone gets a chance to speak early and everyone gets a chance to speak later. Today, we only had, we went through the speaking list only once today. And I certainly agree, it's nice to have a more of a fluid back and forth, but there's always the issue that some people may be more forthcoming and maybe more dominant than others in terms of the conversation. And so at least with speaking lists, everyone definitely has their own unique spot. And I've been trying to make sure that once we go through the speaking list, I ask everyone, or I ask to see if anyone wants to add anything further. So, you know, almost like a second round if necessary. So I can take it under advisement that we should be more fluid, but as I say, I do see some advantages to having speaking lists.
I wasn't suggesting getting rid of the speaking list. It's more if there's another person who wants to, like, let's say it's my turn to talk, and I'm going to pick on Alice again just because I know her relatively well. And Allison sort of says, oh, you know, I have something else to add to that comment that Elizabeth made, even when it's not Allison's turn to talk, just so that she could then kind of interject and then continue on with the speaking list. I do like the way this is working. I just think there's that back and forth in the middle of the order that sometimes would be nice to be able to have.
And I think we had some of that today, you know, with Councillor Kent,
and that's exactly why I brought it up. I thought this is better today. What's different? I thought, yeah, this is something maybe we could sort of try to make a bit more part of our. Anyway, thank you.
I was going to say, certainly moving forward, you know, Hugh and I can work together, but also, you know, there is the raise hand feature, and also in the chat box, if a member wanted to use the chat to say, you know what, I'd like to ask a question regarding XYZ to that particular point. You know, again, using the example of Elizabeth made a comment and Allison wanted to quickly ask a question in regards to something that Elizabeth said before, you know, she wouldn't necessarily know where she falls under the speaker's queue.
Yeah. Okay, I think the point's well taken, and we'll certainly try to be a little bit more, a little less structured, if you like, going forward.
I just had a quick, sorry.
Okay,
and just one more thing. We thought we were finishing early. We're going to be here till 6:30. Yeah, just on like the overuse of the text box, and obviously Milena can speak far more to this, but with like voice to text and whatnot, I think too much activity in the chat box affects that somehow. Perhaps I've experienced that before in meetings.
I would definitely, yeah, our recommendation is to keep the chat box very limited to, so if we use it, so again, we want to follow a similar model to what regional council is doing. Sometimes the more you can put in there, it is open to attendees. So you could have members of the public that are joining into the meeting that, you know, could be seeing information that you don't necessarily want them to see. So we limit it to request to speak. We could put motions in there just so that everybody is aware of, you know, what the motion is that's on the floor. Staff might share the odd link in there, that sort of thing that's very public. And then, you know, if somebody's having technical difficulties and just really couldn't, you know, but could use the chat. But it's sort of those limiting functions that allows, you know, that, yeah, there's not a lot of extras happening within the chat that could prove problematic.
And Milena is grateful for that.
Okay, well, that's probably covered those points fairly well. So it remains for me to, again, to ask for a motion to adjourn and also to wish you all seasonal greetings since we won't be meeting again until January. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Also move.
Okay, thank you, Peter. And that's, we don't require a seconder, and that is not no seconder is needed for that. So our meeting is now finished, and thank you all for attending and for your input. Okay, goodbye.
Malin.
Oh, okay.
Bye, everyone.
Right.
Run.
Bye.